Hare Krishna. Okay, just 1 second. Just got everything. All right. Make sure everybody's here. Make sure everyone can hear me online. Okay, that's working. All right, it's good to see everybody. As everybody knows, I've been away for a while. And the topic this Sunday is about mothers, and particularly my mother who passed away while I was away. So this program is in memory of her, but I'm going to talk philosophically too. And some of the devotees, where's Tulsi? Is she here? She should come here because she has some memories. And Krishna Priya is here or no? She's coming. Okay, Tulsi and Krishna Priya should come. So anyway, so it's going to be about mothers in general and about my mother in particular. And we also like to announce that tonight's feast is sponsored by me and my brother. So somehow or other, I've become a devotee, my brother too, and we're sponsoring the feast. Getting some benefit here. So, and of course, I've been receiving condolences all week long. And anyway, let's start the subject. So it's good to see everybody. And of course, you should all protect yourselves wearing masks. I'm seeing that's very nice. Everybody's wearing a mask here. It's quite a infectious virus that's going around. And I wish Krishna consciousness would be so infectious too with everybody. We just give it to everybody. Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I caught the Hare Krishna virus. Oh my God. This is dangerous. So anyway, material viruses are part of this world. Jayo Radham Badha Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhuva Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Malabha Giribaro Dhagote. Gopijana Malabha Giribaro Dhagote. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Chera Panachate. Yamuna Chera Panachate. Jai Hurad Hamada Bhava Kunja Bihagati. Jai Hurad Madhuva Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Palava Girivardhari Gopijana Palava Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Te Rabana Chati Yamuna Te Rabana Chati Jai Hurat Humar Hura Kunabi Hauti Jai Hurat Madhuva Kunabi Hauti Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravidikacharya All Satara Satishi Shimad His Divine Grace Sabaya Chalanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Marshila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananda Goti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shlahira Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturadam Ki Jai Jagadata Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lalasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschyatate Shatarni Om Ganat Timidanda Shagananjana Shalakya Chakshur and Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigarave Namaha. Good to see everybody. So I'm going to start talking about the Druvamara story. So you may think, how does that relate? So Dhruva Maharaj, of course, was the son of Uttanapada, and I'm not going to get into all the details, but he got really frustrated, and he wanted to have a kingdom greater than that of Lord Brahma. And the reason he wanted to have a kingdom because he was frustrated, I guess, in his relationship with his father. And so basically what he did is he asked his mother, what should I do? Because the mother is the original guru. It's interesting, isn't it? And of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, we have that austerity of the body is offering respects to one's mother, father, spiritual master, worshipful superiors. That's the austerity of the body. So he goes to his mother, and he says that I was told that I have to worship Lord Vishnu. So where am I going to find Lord Vishnu? And his mother, whose name was Suniti, and it's an interesting point. Suniti means good instructions. Suniti, like you have Niti Shastra by Chanakya Pandit, which talks about dealings within this world. So Suniti, her name means good instructions. So she gave him the instruction. I heard that Lord Vishnu is in the forest. So he went to the forest and he met his initiating guru. His mother was actually his first guru. It's called Vartma Pradarshaka Guru. Vartma Pradarshaka Guru means the guru who shows you the path. And the initiating guru, of course, is Diksha Guru. So she said she showed him the path. And then, of course, he got initiated by Narada Muni. And he started chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And ultimately, he saw the Supreme Personality of God. I'm going very quickly through this pastime. I was able to offer many beautiful prayers to the Supreme Personality of God when he saw him. And when it came time for him to leave this world, death personified, he was sort of like death personified as a stepping stone to step on the vehicle going back to the spiritual world. And what he said is, what about my mother? It's a very interesting statement. Now, most of us, we're pretty self-centered, isn't it? We're thinking, no, I'm just going back to Godhead. I'm going to have a good time, and the rest of you suffer. So, but he considered his mother, and what happened is that his mother was in the next airplane. I guess there was no space in his airplane, so his mother was in. The Vaikuntha personality said, "Your mother's on the next airplane." So his mother went back to Godhead, and this is a topic we're going to be talking about today: how the son is actually a putra. Putra means, or his daughter is putri, she or he who can save the parent and bring the parent back to the spiritual realm. Because of the amount of service the mother, and of course the father and other relatives have done, therefore it is the child's duty to actually serve the parents. That's an interesting thing. That's something, of course, I heard from my mother from the very beginning. It's your duty to serve me. But in order to serve someone, one has to know what's the best thing for them. Let's say if you have a very sick person, anyway, I have one disciple right now who has COVID, and she ate ice cream. Ice cream is not the best thing for people with COVID. So you may think, oh, you should get her more ice cream. No. The best thing for people with COVID is, anyway, very light diet, soups and things like that. So you really have to know, or like a doctor has to know what's the best thing for the patient. Like if you ask me, sometimes people get sick and they ask me, what medicine should I take? And I said, I'm not a doctor. We had there was a devotee who was sick with COVID, and this devotee asked me, what should I do? What should I take? And I said, I will connect you with a doctor. So we did a three-way conversation between this devotee and a doctor who's a disciple of mine. And the doctor gave some good advice, take this, take that, don't worry, chant and be happy. So, so we have to know what's the best thing for someone when we want to serve them, isn't it? So sometimes when we do the best thing, the person may get aggravated with us. And sometimes that's love. Even in my childhood, my mother would say, I'm doing certain things, chastising you, training you up, forcing you to go to school because I love you. And I was thinking, boy, I wish she didn't love me that much. And now I realize it was because she loved me. She was doing the best thing in spite of my kicking and screaming of not wanting to do the best thing. Just like Srila Prabhupada's mother, for example, she had to hire someone to drag Prabhupada to school because Prabhupada didn't want to go to school. And I guess his father was more lenient with Prabhupada. So there was this guard, imagine you have to hire someone just to carry your kid to school, even though Prabhupada didn't want to go to school. But obviously it was good that Prabhupada went to school. So the mother actually thinks of the welfare of the child and is ready to sacrifice her own welfare for the benefit of the child. And so the son, to reciprocate with the mother, has to be ready to do what's necessary to help the mother. And we're going to talk about that today in relationship to certain things that happen. But I'm going to read some quotes from Prabhupada, which I put together about a mother's love. It's like the second Mother's Day of the year. So about a mother's love. And actually, I saw that in relationship with my mother. And this is what it means to actually be a mother. And many of you have experienced this too. And then, another point I'm making is that sometimes when you're serving your mother, just like when the mother is serving you, she does things that you didn't want her to do. So when serving your mother later on in life, you have to do things that she may not have wanted you to do, like I did joining the Hare Krishna movement. Well, I'll tell a few stories in between. Like when I joined the Krishna consciousness movement, like 2 centuries ago, last millennium, last day of the Lord Brahma. So 1971, my mother was so shocked that, of course, when I joined, Prabhupada was there. That really convinced me to join. I met Prabhupada 5 days or 7 days after I joined, and it was Prabhupada who got me to join the Krishna consciousness movement. So, all right, so I joined the movement. Prabhupada comes, I'm in ecstasy, and my mother is really in anxiety. What has my son done? Joining the Hare Krishna, what is this cult thing, you know? So she immediately drives up to Gainesville, Florida to see what her son has done. And not only to see what her son has done, she, out of her love, she spends the night in the Hare Krishna temple. And now the Hare Krishna temple at that time was not so developed. It was like an old building with 20 brahmacharis living in one room and 20 brahmacharinis living in another room. And we had a basement. But the interesting thing is in that basement, that's where Prabhupada stayed. I mean, it was a nice basement. We had it all cleaned up. You know, when Prabhupada came, we painted it, we cleaned it up, we rented a bed. So 1 day or 2 days after Prabhupada came, there was my mother. And she stayed in the same rented bed that Prabhupada had stayed in. You can imagine such mercy. And she spent the whole night at the temple, attended the whole morning program. But unfortunately, I was so fanatic at that time that I did some things that shocked her. Because naturally a new devotee, and I apologized to my brother for this, actually yesterday, I apologized. I said, I was really crazy. New people, they're pretty fanatic. Later on, they get some brains when they get older. I was only 21, not fully developed. So what happened is that we were taking prasadam, and it was very simple in those days in the movement. We would always sit on the floor, and our plates were sheets of wax paper. You probably remember this at Purvati. And the wax paper naturally got pretty soaked from eating it. But I was just like, this is prasadam, it's wonderful. I'm eating with my hands, which is, sorry, Krishna's. My mother's looking, oh my God. I mean, later on, I had visited her in her house, and I was eating with my hands. She said, that's like an animal. Because, the West, you don't really appreciate that. You can't eat with your hands unless you're eating some flesh or something like that. So I was sitting there eating prasadam, there's prasadam, non-different from Krishna. It's Krishna's mercy, everything like that. And then I spilled some water. And I was thinking, this water is also prasadam, it's Krishna's mercy. And my mother was sitting there in a chair watching us all eat. And I thought, I can't let this water stay on the floor. So I got down on my dandabats and started slurping the water off the floor. There was out of devotion. And my mother was going, oh my God. I've this child's done everything for him, sent him to the university, paid for his education and everything like that. And here he's slurping the water. I mean, it's lucky she survived that day. Because so much devotion, real care, but, and I was just so insensitive at that point. Later on, I got to appreciate my mother more and I loved more, and she got to appreciate me more after I became a normal human being after 25 years in the Hare Krishna movement. So it was, and actually my parents got really worried. I'm skipping ahead what I had planned, but anyway, my parents got really worried. At a particular time, they wanted to arrange for deprogramming because they thought, I'd gone off the deep end. I needed a psychiatrist. So, several things happened. My brother told me that there were plans to do that. And so one time I went to visit my father and my mother, and I went into the house. My father introduced me to his friend, Dr. Freud. It wasn't Dr. Freud, but, some psychiatrist. I went to meet my friend. Then all of a sudden, my father disappeared for about 3 hours. And there I was on the couch. How do you feel? Great. And then I asked the psychiatrist, how do you feel? Do you have any goal in life? I said to the psychiatrist. Yeah, this is it. And what's your ultimate goal? He said, well, just to be happy. And he said, do you know how to be happy? I said. And so by the time I was finished with the psychiatrist, he was ready for deprogramming too. So he said to my father, there's nothing I could do with him. So I mean, I really wasn't able to explain properly to my parents and to my brother really what I was doing. And, it took years and years and years for them to understand why I was doing what I was doing. But what I'm trying to talk about is like the love my mother had for me and my reciprocation for that love. So I'm going to read some quotes from Prabhupada about a mother's love for her children. And it's really touching to read about this. And actually, I perceive this myself in my interactions with my mother. So Prabhupada says, for often we observe that a mother's loving concern for an adult child is not always justified by actual danger to the child. A grown child may be wealthy, competent, and healthy, and yet the mother's loving concern continues. Similarly, a pure devotee always feels loving concern for Lord Krishna, as exemplified by Mother Yashoda, who could only think of Krishna as her beautiful son. So it's like that, that maternal relationship. And Prabhupada also talks about how the purest love that one finds in this world is the love that a mother has for her child. There's nothing so pure like that in this material world. And then Prabhupada continues, if one loves Krishna as one's child, then one will have such privilege because mother has the most love for the child. Even in this material world, there's no comparison to a mother's love. For a mother loves her child without any expectation of return. Here's another one. Prabhupada says, just like the child is searching after the mother's breast and is crying. If someone takes the child, he's not satisfied because he cannot express that I want my mother. In this material world, there's no comparison of a mother's love without any exchange. Even in this material world, mother loves the child without any expectation of return. So these are some of the quotes. And then there are some stories about mother's love for her children in the Vedic literatures. You have the story of Diti, for example. Diti is the mother of the demigods. And her son Indra was deprived of his heavenly position because the demons had defeated the demigods and taken away heaven from them. And so she performed these really strong austerities called Payovrata. That means living just on drinking milk and making a lot of prayers. And then by that performance, she got Lord Vamanadeva as her son. And she was able to get back the heavenly planets, or Lord Vamanadeva was able to get back the heavenly planets for her. And then on the other hand, you have Diti, who is the mother of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And when Diti saw that her children were actually liberated by Lord Vishnu, it's described that her from her breast came blood. She was so upset. The love that she had was so upset. And then she decided that she wanted to kill Indra as a result. And she executed this heavy sacrifice. And of course, she wasn't successful at it, but she had 49 kids as a result of that, the Maruts. That story is there also in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada also said that the chanting, when we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, it's exactly like the crying of a child for his mother. So there's many, many comparisons like this. So then one may ask, okay, all right, so what have you done, referring to me, for your mother? You joined the Hare Krishna movement, you put her in anxiety, you didn't become a doctor like your brother. I joke with my brother that, he's a foot doctor and he has to bathe other people's feet. And anyway, when I go to people's houses, you know what happens. Anyway, so I said, your occupation is the opposite of mine. Yeah. And I get paid for having my feet bathed. So anyway, so he also gets paid for bathing other people's feet. But anyway, so it's interesting occupation. So one may say, what have you done for? You're supposed to be a putra. You're supposed to be like Dhruva Maharaj. So there's some quotes here that illustrate really what a son does, or what a child or what a relative does for all of his relatives. And generally, these quotes are in relationship to Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad Maharaj. In fact, you find when Hiranyakashipu left his body in a very fortunate way, Prahlad Maharaj, the only thing he asked for from his father, from Lord Nrsingadev, was for his father's benefit and for the benefit of everyone, even though his father had done so many, let's say, things that were reprehensible. So here's some quotes about this. Prahlad Maharaj accepted whatever the Lord offered him, and he prayed to the Lord to deliver his father. In response to this prayer, the Lord assured him that in the family of such a pure devotee as he, not only is the devotee's father, but his forefathers for 21 generations are liberated. Later on, there's a quote here, I don't know if I'll have time to read it, where Prabhupada said, liberation means becoming a devotee. In other words, they get an opportunity to take up devotional service. The Lord also asked Prahlad to perform the ritualistic ceremony appropriate after his father's death. Another quote, on the other hand, if someone becomes a pure devotee, Lord, 10 generations of his family before his birth and 10 generations after will be liberated. In other words, it's the best thing you can do for your family. I mean, it's not that you shouldn't neglect your family materially. You should always have a loving relationship with your family, but the best thing, you're asking the best thing you can do. Sometimes, and I know even in Indian families, it's like that the parents don't want their children to become full-on devotees. They're afraid. They're thinking to become a full-on devotee means, living like a brahmachari. No, you don't have to live like a brahmachari. You can go to the university, you can get your PhD, you can have a family like that. But sometimes even in India, I mean, I remember we had some people, some children who wanted to join the Krishna conscious movement, their families, in order to save them from the Krishna conscious movement, sent them away, even though they really wanted to be Krishna conscious. So the parents should understand the best thing for the child who's a devotee. It's like one sandalwood tree in a forest makes the whole forest fragrant. So one Vaishnava in a family makes the whole family auspicious. My father, before he passed away, he said to me, he said, I know I've been successful in business because of your devotion. He realized that. I mean, but for years, he didn't understand, but it took some time. It took some time for him to understand. So this is not just a Western phenomena that I'm talking about. This happens in families of people from India too. I have some parents who are actually devotees, but they don't want their children to be. As I said before, being a devotee doesn't mean you have to be like me, fanatic, or sannyas, because people have this conception being a devotee means you're sannyas, you have to give up everything. But actually, we believe in yukta vairagya. Anasha dasha vishayanyataha upayunjata Krishna sambandhe yukta vairagya muchate. We believe in using everything for Krishna's service. And so most people, 99% of the people there are going to be married with a family. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was married with a family too. So just another quote or two. If someone, it is confirmed by the Lord, this is from the story of King Riga, that not only does the Vaishnava's father and mother, but everyone for 21 generations got Vaishnava receives liberation. Thus, by serving the Lord, one renders the best service to his family because 21 generations are liberated if one becomes a pure Vaishnava. And here's a quote from Lord Nrsingadev. My dear Prahlad, not only your father, but your father's father, his father, up to 14 generations, all liberated because you were born in this family. So anyone who's become a Vaishnava devotee Lord, he is giving the greatest service to the family because in relationship with him, his father, mother, anyone, they will all be liberated. Just one more quote. Lord Nrsingadev immediately replied, why do you speak of your father? Your father's father, his father, 14 generations, all liberated because the son like you was in the family. So this is the benefit. If a son becomes a pure devotee, he can deliver 14 generations. That is special prerogative because he is born in a certain family. So what we can give service to the family, nation materially. If we become a devotee, we can give the best service to the nation, to the family, to humanity. Okay, so I got more quotes, but I'm not going to read all the quotes. Anyway, just one more quote between Prabhupada and a devotee named Pushta Krishna. Pushta Krishna says, one who becomes a devotee, the statement is that 14 generations of his family, past, present, and future, become liberated. So what kind of liberation does the family member of a pure Vaishnava get? Prabhupada replies, liberation means, that is explained by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to become devotee. That is liberation. To become devotee is itself liberation. Okay. Now I guess I'll start getting more personal. So the benefit, there's many other benefits of having a good mother, and which Prabhupada talked about. Prabhupada was very, very close to his mother. And Prabhupada said that if one has a close relationship with one's mother, especially the boys, then they will not succumb to lust later on in life. There's a very important principle which Prabhupada did talk about, and it helps one become, the mother's influence helps one become more psychologically balanced. And we did mention before, the mother is the first guru, sacrifices her own happiness for her children. And here's the story about my own mother, and she's ideal in this regard. She imparted many values. The mother imparts values. My mother taught me about cleanliness, compassion. I mean, a lot of compassion, tolerance, because she was able to tolerate everything I did. Prabhupada said, if one is a cheeky child, it's a sign of intelligence. So not that I'm bragging about intelligence, but I was pretty bad. Some of the things I did, I don't even want to repeat in Bhagavatam class or in front of everybody to my mother. It was just like, I got happiness by teasing her and making life miserable for her. But she tolerated me and kept doing whatever I needed, kept bringing me whatever I needed. She taught me the importance of truthfulness, always being truthful in every circumstance, the importance or value of education and knowledge. And she did give me faith in God, even before I came to the Krishna consciousness movement. A mother does that. And of course, it wasn't exactly in the same way as we normally think about faith in God. I mean, one of the things that she told me was that I believe she believes in God because every time she wants a parking space, she would pray to God. This is in New York City. And God would provide a parking space. Of course, I told her that's because of me. You're getting that reciprocation. By my mercy, you're getting a parking space. And, when I was young, even when she chastised me, she would say, God made me do it. So there was God was always there. Even though I did go to a sort of semi-religious school when I was young, I didn't get any faith in God from the religious school at all. It was just like all history and rituals. It just didn't connect with me. But because of my mother continually talking about God, and even things like if I hurt myself, God is punishing you for not listening to me. I'm sure some of you from India will understand what I just said, right? Because the type of family I was brought up in is very similar culturally to Indian families. God is punishing you for not listening to me. So, but still, there was God everywhere. There was God everywhere. And she was so dedicated that she would drive me to all my lessons and tolerated, as I said, my cheekiness and focused completely on her children, myself and my brother. Even though she was a very educated lady, she had almost PhD, except for a thesis, several master's degrees. But she did it all in such a way that she was always there. In other words, at night, after I'd go to sleep, or my father was home taking care of us. So never did we lack the mother being there. It's a really important point. We've been talking to some of the devotees about something called attachment parenting. How if the mother is there, it gives the child security. It provides emotionally well-balanced background. So anyway, then fast forward, then when I did something she didn't like, and joining the Hare Krishna movement for her benefit, she didn't understand at that point. Now she does, and we're going to tell the story about that in a second. And this story that we're going to tell in a second, and of course, Tulsi Devi, wherever she is, she'll actually tell the story because she's involved in that story, will illustrate how, if you're a devotee, Krishna helps you, because ultimately the success of life is yam yam vapi smaran bhavam yajate ante kalevaram, right? Remembering Krishna at the time of leaving this world. So, okay. So anyway, let's tell a little bit more stories about my mother. So when I joined the Hare Krishna movement, she wouldn't admit to any of her friends that I had joined the Hare Krishna movement. And so when I would come to visit her, she explained to everybody that I had gone to Israel, which I'd never been to. And I had joined something called a kibbutz, which is like a communal religious community in Israel. So I would go and she would introduce me to her friends. Of course, I dressed in Western clothes at that point. And the friends would ask me, how is the kibbutz? How is Israel? And I'm thinking, I'm not supposed to lie. So I didn't say I wasn't there. I just said, oh, Israel is very nice. I covered for my mother because it was very embarrassing for her culturally, here why she didn't know what Krishna consciousness was, and culturally, just like way out. Even when I took her in to see the deities in New York, I thought, let her see Radha Govinda and she'll become Krishna conscious immediately. So she walks into this temple in New York, big Radha Govinda deities, and she says, your father should be on the altar. So, sometimes you have these unrealistic expectations. So, anyway, I mean, after some time, she did begin to appreciate. She went to Rath Yatras, attended Rath Yatras, especially after it became a sannyasi. Then it became my son, the sannyasi, because I wasn't an ordinary brahmachari at that time. So she had something to brag about. But she even went to New Vrindavan to see me in the early days, when New Vrindavan was so primitive at that time that when you walked, the mud would come up above your knees. So she came to see me in New Vrindavan, and I thought, now she's becoming Krishna conscious. And she even gave a ride to Nanda Maharaj after that. And she remembered him for a long period of time. And so then after some time, she became very, very much favorable after she began to know me, know the devotees, made friends with different devotees like Krishna Priya here, Tulsi here, and some of the other devotees. And I think even Gopi, my mother, right? And so she became so favorable that she decided to pay, I have a little house here. She actually paid for the house, the construction on the house that I'm living in. And so she became so favorable to Krishna consciousness. And even my grandmother, her mother, used to go to my classes when I was in Miami and cry during the classes. You remember that? Krishna Priya was there. Yeah. So my brother doesn't, my brother's watching probably and thinking, what is this guy talking about now? So, because he doesn't know these inside stories. She used to attend my classes, and afterwards, oh, I'm so proud of you. And, as a sannyasi, in the middle of class, she comes up and, hey, Grandma, I'm a sannyasi. Doesn't understand that. So what? Yeah, we had I had a very, very close relationship with my grandmother. And anyway, so it ended up that she was extremely proud of what I'm doing. And then fast forward, the last few years, she's actually been confined to her house or apartment in New York. And she had a full-time nurse. And I was calling her and having video calls with her, visit her during the COVID a little bit. I think one time during COVID, because I wanted to be really careful with her. And then recently, about 3 weeks ago, while I was in Fiji, and I didn't know she was going to pass away so quickly, she passed away. But I was thinking, I have to be there, and it wasn't possible to get back to her, just impractical, take days to get back. So I thought, what am I going to do? And so then I thought that my mother has a very close relationship with some of the devotees, particularly Tulsi Devi there. So I said, let Tulsi go and see my mother. So I contacted my brother and I said, I want to send Tulsi. And my brother said, no. And then I was thinking, no, Tulsi has to go. I have to keep insisting. My brother kept saying no. And then I said, well, she can just go and spend just, a few minutes and leave. And so he finally relents and says, okay. So I put her on a flight the next day, isn't it? I actually bought the ticket online, put her on the flight the next day. She flies up there, and Tulsi will tell you the whole story in a second, but she flies up there, gets picked up by another friend who lives in Philadelphia, drives her to my mother's apartment, goes up to see my mother and basically lies down to next to her, chants the holy names, put a glass of wine on or something like that. Because I'm on the flat screen, because my mother was very attached to me and still is, and chants the holy name to my mother and consoles her, and she'll tell you the whole story. And then an hour or two later, my mother leaves this world hearing the holy names, Tulsi water and Tulsi leaves and everything like that. So what you can learn from that is that Krishna really does take care of the devotees, relatives. And my brother was extremely grateful because devotees are very compassionate. Even Tulsi is very compassionate. I mean, she's extremely compassionate. She's had a close relationship with my mother for years. You know, when I went to my mother's apartment, I just came back from New York last night, and I saw posted my mother's favorite telephone numbers, people to call on the telephone. It was just me and Tulsi. Not even, I teased my brother. I said, your name's not there. So, and so Tulsi actually was able to console my brother, console the nurse who was taking care of, and do all the arrangements and help clean up the apartment and everything like that. And my brother just said, wow, I always wanted a sister like her. He said, I want a good sister. He said that to me. And so, see, a devotee naturally has all the good qualities of the demigods. So Tulsi, I guess, oh my God, I've never said a nice thing about her this lifetime. But anyway, so it shows that Yashyasti Bhakti Bhagavacha Kinchana Sarva Ganas Tatra Samasate Saral. Harabha Bhaktasha Kato Mahadguna Manorite Nasati Davato Bihi. By Prabhupada's mercy, by Krishna's mercy, we take up devotional service. And somehow or other, the good qualities manifest themselves. It took me about 50 years to manifest any qualities, but we see with the devotees who come and they chant and they perform devotional service, it's amazing. They become saintly after some time. And, all these devotees I've been working with for years and years and years, they actually develop so many saintly qualities. And I'm just so thankful. I was thinking like this when I was in Fiji. It had not much to do with my mother, but I was thinking, I'm so thankful to be surrounded by all these saintly personalities. Like this morning, we were having some sort of little party, a post-Christmas party, so we could all collect presents. And I was just thinking about Aditya Narayan Prabhu, who's like a great saint, was dedicated selflessly to distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, isn't it? And I was thinking, wow, how fortunate. Sometimes we think about the negative things in life, isn't it? And, we look at the moon and we say, look at those spots. Yuck. But the moon is beautiful. So, just think about all these great saintly devotees that we have here who are just like dedicating their lives to serving as divine, or Purvaji here, who's dedicated his life to cooking prasadam. And, I've been in the kitchen with him before. And he made me surrender to Krishna in many different ways, because I was cleaning the pots and the pots were flying, it's just like I had to duck every 5 minutes to avoid having lacerations on my neck. So, no, it wasn't that bad. I just little hyperbole there. So the point is, we're so fortunate to be surrounded by these saintly personalities who just like, wow, and we don't really appreciate them enough. So I've just seen that, these devotees are nice. Anyway, so that was Tulsi. She helped my mother. And then I was very, very grateful because I consider my mother achieved victory. So the passing of my mother, of course, was inevitable, and we all would like to keep our mothers and fathers with us forever and ever and ever. But for someone to achieve victory like that, to leave this world, yam yam bapi smaran babam yasate ante kalevaram tam tame baiti konti asadat tad baba babata. That's amazing. And I've seen that Krishna arranges this in other this is not a unique circumstance, but I've seen that Krishna arranges this. Sometimes devotees, they go away, and then somehow or other, the last month or so, they come back to Vrindavan, and Krishna takes care of them, and they leave with devotees surrounding them, chanting the holy names. I mean, this is victory. So we should all aspire for that victory personally, and aspire for that victory for our relatives. I mean, that's the best thing you can do for your family. You know, they often said no one should become a guru or mother or father. And I also say no one should become a son or daughter unless you can actually help your family in the best possible way. I mean, what does love mean? Love means, you know, to do the best thing for your family. And I felt so happy that I had done the best thing for my mother. I mean, Tulsi did the best thing. She's an ocean of mercy. So anyway, so that's the story, and we're dedicating tonight's program. You know, I hope I made it a little philosophical. And if Tulsi wants and Krishna Pri want to say something in memory, we can do that real quickly, and we can get the microphone for them if they.
Tulsi will tell the passing, and I'm just going to speak a little bit about Gurdev's mother, Lynn Hoffman, who I first met her, like we were saying, in Miami. We had a temple on Miami Beach, and his mother and grandmother would come and visit. His mother fit in very well in Miami Beach. And she was a brilliant woman, actually. She was extremely high class and very, very intelligent and very articulate and so fun. She was very funny. She was just like hilarious, really, really funny. And we all know that Bir Krishna Maharaj is, you know, concerned with like health and well-being. So his mother, even up to the very late age in life, she always liked to go swimming. She was really into getting exercise and swimming. And we had many years ago, there was two girls that were twins here, Amrita and Radhe. And when they were young, his mother in New York, his mother had actually been their teacher. So she was a very wonderful teacher. So we see that teaching ran in the family. And she, like as Gurudev was saying, the love of a mother was so strong. You know, she had so much love for him that she kept his baby shoes at the house, and different pictures. And she would always tell us like different stories all the time. And we could really appreciate the love. And then when the devotees came up here and they were living really austerely, she was very concerned. I remember her sending me sweaters. You know, she was concerned that we would be warm, and she would send sweaters. And in the beginning days, everything was very austere up here. It wasn't like it is now. And so she was always very concerned that her son would have what he needed. So sometimes Tulsi would call or I would call, and she'd like, I know what you're up to, you know. But she always wanted to, you know, to help and to help in some way. And she did become very proud. Like first she became proud when he was a sannyasi. Then she became really proud when he was a guru. And in the early days, how she had that mood, it said like about the deities, but here in the temple, she would come up into the temple for a Sunday program and associate with devotees. And I just remember something really funny, because she would always like to go, even when she was older, she would take the subway. She was so determined. This woman was so determined. She would take the subway by herself and come to the Rath Yatra. And then one year, this one sannyasi came up to me, and he was laughing and laughing. And he said, I met Bir Krishna Maharaj's mother. And I said, how did you know? He said, because she came up to me and she said, I'm looking for my son. Do you know him? He's a guru and he dresses just like you. So she was you know, I was just amazed by her determination. She used to come here and visit a lot and just really liked being with the devotees. And so as Gurudev was saying, you can see how, what an effect the mother has on a child. And one thing I was reflecting upon also is that we see if someone has a good, if a boy has a good relationship with their mother, then how they treat women is affected by that, and how they relate. You know, it's just creates a much better atmosphere of respect and dignity. So I don't want to go on a lot, but I just I very much appreciate, she was a very animated. Her mother was an amazing artist and also very, very animated person. And so I was very happy that she was in our life. And I'm thrilled actually on her, how she was able to leave. And that really gives me so much faith, you know, how if one engages in pure devotional service, that we see how the family becomes so transformed, and how Krishna reciprocates with that service that is done. So I'm going to let Tulsi tell the story.
All right, well, sorry, I'm not a good speaker, but anyways, I just saw everything was really Krishna's arrangement, because we found out she was going to leave very soon. So, and Gurudev had really wanted to be with her at that time, but he was in Fiji and couldn't get a flight out. So he calls me up, and within a few hours later, I was on a plane flying to New York. And, you know, devotees here arranged, you know, to get me to the airport at the last minute. And devotee there drove from Pennsylvania to pick me up and drop me off. And I mean, I just walked right in, and I mean, I could see she only had a very short time left. And even before that, when I knew I couldn't be with her for several months, in my own heart, I was feeling like I really wanted to be with her, to help her. And so Krishna arranged that I got that as well. And so when I walked in, you know, I just went right up to her bed and put my head on her pillow and just, you know, was putting my hand on her head and just telling her I was there to help her leave her body, because, you know, it was obvious it was only a short time. And, you know, she had different nurses coming in, and, you know, they would just look at her and then start talking about really like mundane things right in front of her. And I was just like, get out of here, you know, this isn't the time to talk about your own life. And then her helper, you know, immediately put on a class of Gurudev right in front of her, and really loud. And so she was hearing this class, and in the class it was talking about how when someone's in a coma or unconscious, you don't talk about anything because the soul can hear. And it was just so appropriate too, because I was thinking that, and then he's talking it right there. And then he talked about how we should have that higher inspiration to help others, especially spiritually. And so Gurudev was actually there in his instructions, just speaking what she needed to hear at the last moments, because I could see she was struggling against it. And so I just spent the whole time. It took about an hour and a half that I was with her before she left her body. During that time, I just helped her work through it and got everybody out that was talking about their own lives in front of her, thinking she couldn't hear. And so I just comforted her and told her whole life was successful. She raised two very nice, I mean, excellent boys. You know, Mac was, you know, a doctor helping people, and of course, Gurudev's a spiritual doctor and helping everyone. And her and I had that whole relationship of, because he was always reticent to talk about himself to her. So I'd always call her up or she'd call me and I'd tell her stories about what he was doing. And she just really loved it and appreciated how much he was helping people, spiritually and even materially. And so when it came time, I could see she was going through the different stages of letting go of her body. And so I just assured her life was successful and just how she prayed for parking spots and God reciprocated with her. Now she could pray just to go to be with God. And that would be the perfection of her life, that she should just trust that that will be the ultimate. And I just soothed her and talked to her about that and just chanted and chanted while Gurudev was giving classes too. And then I put Tulsi in her mouth and all the holy waters and Tulsi neck beads on and everything. And then it was just me and her. And then she just took her big last breath and then stopped. And then she took one more. And then I could see her just leave her mouth, through her mouth. And then I just felt strongly her presence, like above the bed, just so strong, her spiritual presence. And she was so happy. I could feel this like overwhelming spiritual happiness and bliss. And that she was so grateful for the help that she got in doing that and how God reciprocated with her. And it was just so tangible. It was just so palpable just to feel that and just the overwhelming love and success of this soul going back to Godhead. I just felt honored to be able to help a soul, let alone speak to someone that I knew so well. And we had such a relationship and she helped me so much. But anyways, I'm not a good talker, so. But anyways, I was just very honored to be able to be there for her. And Gurudev was really happy that, I felt honored to be able to do that on behalf of Gurudev because he so wanted to be there. And anyways, I guess, there's a lot more I could say, but I'll keep it short.
This one won't. Okay, that's good. So
Srimad Bhagavatam, one purport, that the qualities of the mother go to the father, to the son, and vice versa. The qualities of the father go to the mother. Daughter. So we are eternally indebted to Bir Krishna Maharaj's mother for giving us the gift of Bir Krishna Goswami, because it is her qualities that he's imbibed. And that's explained in the Bhagavatam one. Purport, Srila Prabhupada explains the qualities of the mother go to the son, vice versa.
So we want to thank everybody for being so patient through this. And as I said before, my brother and I are sponsoring the feast you're eating by my mother's mercy. And it's just success. It just gives one great hope in life. You hear how Krishna takes care of one's near and dear ones, isn't it? And of course, this is all Shastric, it's just amazing. And then also gives us hope Krishna will take care of us when the right time is there. And Krishna never forgets. If someone does some service for him, Krishna never forgets it. If one time one says, Krishna, from this day forward, I'm yours, that's it. That's it. Krishna never forgets you at that point. So this is benefit of Krishna consciousness. It makes me very positive about this world, about next life, about serving Prabhupada, just hearing stories like this. Very inspiring. Okay, thank you very much. All glories to His divine grace. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Haribol.